The forest was quiet that morning, with only the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds filling the air. Sunlight filtered through the tall trees, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. He had been walking for hours, enjoying the solitude and the smell of damp earth and pine. The path was narrow and winding, but he liked the way it made him feel removed from the noise of the city, removed from the obligations and the constant movement of life. As he moved deeper into the forest, he noticed something unusual. It was faint at first, almost easy to dismiss, a soft, muffled sound that didn't belong to the wind or the birds. He paused, listening carefully. There it was again, a quiet, uneven sob, almost like someone crying. His heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure if he should continue walking or turn back. Something about the sound pulled him forward, a mix of concern and curiosity pushing him deeper into the trees. The sobs grew a little louder as he approached a small clearing. He moved cautiously, scanning the area. The sunlight hit a patch of undergrowth and he saw her. She was sitting on the ground, knees drawn to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her hair was tangled and her clothes were torn and dirty. She looked small and fragile, a girl who seemed far too young to be alone in the forest. He froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. She looked up briefly and her wide eyes met his. They were filled with fear, confusion, and something else he couldn't quite place, an uncertainty that made him hesitate. She didn't speak and he didn't move immediately. The air between them was heavy with tension, the quiet broken only by the faint rustling of leaves and the occasional bird call. Finally, he took a cautious step forward. "Hey," he said gently, keeping his voice calm and steady. "It's okay. You're safe. I won't hurt you." The girl flinched, pulling her knees tighter. Her eyes darted around as if searching for a way to escape. He could see that she was trembling and he realized just how scared she must have been. He lowered himself slightly, kneeling so he was closer to her level but still keeping a safe distance. "I'm here to help," he said softly. "Can you tell me your name?" She didn't answer. She shook her head slightly, her long hair falling over her face. The fear in her eyes was palpable, and he understood that words alone wouldn't be enough. He needed to earn her trust slowly, carefully. "Okay," he said gently, keeping his tone reassuring. "I won't force you to say anything, but you can come with me if you want. There's a safe place nearby and I can make sure you get food and water. Will you let me help you?" For a long moment she remained silent, watching him warily. Then almost imperceptibly she nodded. It was small, almost like a whisper, but it was enough. He extended his hand slowly and she hesitated before taking it. Her grip was weak and she flinched slightly when his hand touched hers, but she didn't pull away. He helped her to her feet, careful not to startle her. She was smaller than he expected, and her body shook with every step she took. He kept his pace slow, giving her time to adjust. As they walked, he noticed the cuts and bruises on her arms and legs, the dirt under her fingernails, and the way she seemed to flinch at every sound. It was clear that she had been through something difficult, something that had left her wary of strangers. "Do you know where you are?" he asked gently, trying to gather more information. She shook her head. I don't know," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible, a soft tremor running through it. "That's okay," he said, keeping his voice calm. "We'll figure it out together. I promise. I just want to make sure you're safe." They continued walking slowly through the forest. He kept scanning the surroundings, alert to any potential dangers. He noticed broken branches, footprints in the mud, and small signs that suggested she had been wandering for some time. Her clothes were torn and stained, and her shoes were worn. It was clear that she hadn't had proper food or water for a while. As they moved deeper into the forest, he spoke gently to her, trying to keep her calm. "What's your favorite color?" he asked softly. "Or maybe a favorite animal?" She didn't answer immediately. Then after a moment she said quietly, "Blue." "That's a good color," he replied with a small smile. "Blue is calm and strong like the sky and the ocean." "I like it too." She glanced at him briefly, her eyes still wary but a little less tense. It was a small victory, a sign that she was beginning to trust him. They came to a small stream and he stopped to let her rest. He pulled out a bottle of water from his backpack and offered it to her. She took it cautiously, sipping slowly as if testing whether it was safe. He watched her closely, feeling a mix of relief and concern. She was alive, she was here, but she was fragile and he needed to make sure she stayed safe. After a few minutes, he spoke again. "We should get out of the forest soon. There's a cabin nearby not far from here. It's warm and we can get some food and clean up a little. Will you come with me? She hesitated, looking at the path ahead and then back at him. Finally, she nodded. He offered his hand again, and this time she took it without hesitation. They continued walking, her small hand holding his with a tentative trust that warmed him in a way he hadn't expected. The path led them to a small clearing, where the sunlight broke through in golden patches. He could see the outline of a cabin in the distance, its roof partially covered in moss. Relief washed over him. They were close to safety now. As they approached the cabin, he spoke gently. Almost there. You're doing great. Just a little further. She looked at him, her eyes wide, and whispered, Will they be mad at me? Who? He asked gently. The people. If they find me, she said softly, her voice trembling. He shook his head. No one will be mad at you. You're safe now and we'll make sure you're okay. That's what matters. They reached the cabin and he opened the door slowly. Inside it was modest but clean. The smell of wood and warmth filled the air. He guided her to a chair near the fireplace and sat down across from her. You can rest here for a little while, he said. I'll make sure you have something to eat and drink. She nodded, still wary but less frightened. He could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the way her body sagged as if the weight of everything she had endured was finally catching up with her. He felt a surge of protectiveness, a desire to shield her from the world and its dangers. He went to the small kitchen area and prepared some simple food, bread, fruit, and water. When he returned, he placed it gently in front of her. Eat slowly, he said softly. You've been through a lot and your body needs food. She looked at the food, then at him and nodded again. She began to eat slowly, cautiously, as if testing whether it was safe. He watched her, careful not to rush or pressure her. Each bite she took felt like a small victory, a step toward recovery. After a while, she set the food aside and leaned back in her chair, her eyes meeting his. Why did you help me? She asked quietly. The night was calm outside the small cabin, with the sounds of the forest settling into quiet rhythms. Owls called softly from the trees, and the rustle of leaves in the gentle wind filled the background. Inside, the warmth of the fire contrasted sharply with the chill of the night, creating a cocoon of safety around the two of them. He sat in a chair nearby, keeping a careful eye on the girl. She was curled up on a blanket he had provided, her knees drawn to her chest, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. He knew that sleep would not come easily to her. The fear, uncertainty, and loneliness she had endured for who knew how long would not simply vanish in one night. She was safe now, yes, but her mind carried the weight of what she had experienced. He could see it in the way her hands trembled slightly, in the way she flinched at the smallest sounds, and in the distant look in her eyes. After a few minutes, he decided to speak softly, trying to offer reassurance without pressuring her. You're safe here, he said gently. No one is going to hurt you. You can rest for as long as you need. She didn't respond immediately, just blinked slowly and hugged her knees tighter. Her silence spoke volumes. Her trust was not given freely, it had to be earned slowly. He understood that. He got up quietly and went to the small kitchen area to prepare a simple drink, a warm herbal tea that might help her calm down. As he returned with the cup, he noticed her eyes following him, curiosity flickering through her fear. Here, he said softly, placing the cup gently in front of her. Drink slowly. It's warm and should help you relax a little. She hesitated, then took the cup in her hands. The warmth seeped into her palms, and she sipped slowly as if testing whether it was safe. Each small action, each hesitant movement was a reminder of the fragility of her situation and how much care she needed. He sat back down across from her and watched quietly. Do you want to talk? He asked after a moment. About anything. You don't have to if you're not ready. She shook her head slightly. I don't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't remember everything. He nodded slowly. That's okay. You don't have to remember everything right away. We'll take it slowly. You're not alone anymore. The fire crackled softly in the background, filling the room with a gentle, comforting sound. He realized that she needed more than food and water. She needed patience, understanding, and a safe space where she could begin to feel secure. Over the next hour, he gently asked questions, keeping his voice calm and steady. He didn't push her for details she wasn't ready to share, but he tried to create small openings for her to speak when she felt able. Do you remember how long you've been out here? He asked softly. She hesitated, then shook her head. I think a few days, she murmured. Maybe longer. Okay, he said gently. That's a long time to be alone. But you're safe now. We'll make sure you have food, water, and a place to rest. She nodded slowly, her eyes downcast. The fear was still there, but a small flicker of relief had appeared. It was a fragile light, but it was a start. The next morning he woke early, careful not to disturb her. She was still asleep, curled up on the blanket, her breathing slow and steady. He prepared a simple breakfast, bread, fruit, and a bit of porridge, and gently placed it on the small table near her. When she woke, she looked around the cabin cautiously. Good morning, he said softly, smiling gently. You slept well? She nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I think so. He handed her the plate of food. Eat slowly. We have time. There's no rush. As she ate, he began to think about the next steps. The girl had been found in the forest, clearly alone and in need of help. But her story was a mystery. There were so many questions. Where had she come from? How had she ended up in the forest? Had anyone been looking for her? Was she hiding from someone, or had she simply gotten lost? He knew he couldn't force her to answer all these questions immediately. She needed time to feel safe enough to share, but he also knew that leaving the answers unknown for too long could create risks. Someone might be looking for her, and he had a responsibility to ensure her safety. After breakfast, he decided to take a small walk outside with her. The forest was calmer in the morning, the air crisp and filled with the scent of pine and earth. She followed hesitantly, keeping close to him, her small hand brushing against his arm now and then. They walked slowly, and he spoke softly. The forest can feel overwhelming when you're alone, he said. It's easy to get lost, and it can feel very big and scary. But now you're not alone. I'm here with you, she nodded, her eyes downcast. It's still scary, she admitted. I know, he said gently, but that's okay. Feeling scared doesn't mean anything bad is happening. It just means you're human. You're allowed to feel scared, and you're allowed to feel safe too, even if it takes time. They stopped by a small stream, and he knelt down to fill a water bottle. She watched him silently, her eyes wide with curiosity. Slowly, she reached out to touch the water, letting the coolness flow over her fingers. It was a small moment of connection to the world around her, a moment that reminded her she was still part of it. As they continued walking, she began to speak in small fragments. I was running, she said quietly. They were, I don't know. I ran. He nodded slowly, listening carefully without pressing her for details. It's okay, he said softly. You don't have to explain everything right now. Just know that you're safe with me. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. But they'll come back, she whispered. He shook his head gently. No one is going to hurt you now. Not here, not with me. I promise, she nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. It was clear that she had been living with fear for a long time, fear that had become a part of her daily existence. He realized that helping her would not be simple or quick. It would require patience, understanding, and consistent reassurance. Back at the cabin, he helped her wash up and change into some clean clothes he had packed. She was hesitant at first, but he gave her space and privacy, allowing her to move at her own pace. It was a small act, but one that helped her regain a sense of control over her own life, however small it might be. The authorities had taken the girl to a small, quiet room in the local station, a space designed to make anyone feel safe, though she still seemed unsure of what to expect. He followed, keeping a careful distance but ready to step in if she needed reassurance. Her hand brushed lightly against his arm as they walked, a subtle sign that she trusted him, even if only a little. Inside the room, a social worker was waiting. She was gentle, with a calm voice and warm eyes, and she knelt down to the girl's level just as he had done in the forest. Hello, she said softly. My name is Clara. I'm here to help you. Can you tell me your name? The girl hesitated, glancing at him. He gave her a small nod, a silent message that she was safe. After a long pause, she whispered, I don't know. Clara nodded gently. That's okay. You don't need to know everything right now. We just want to make sure you're safe and that we can help you. He could see the relief in the girl's eyes, but it was mixed with fear and uncertainty. She was still cautious, still wary of anyone new, and that was understandable. She had been alone in the forest, lost and vulnerable. It would take time for her to trust fully. and he knew patience was essential. Over the next few hours, they tried to gather information. The girl spoke in small fragments, offering brief details here and there. She remembered running through the forest, hiding from someone she didn't name. She recalled cold nights and hunger, but the rest of her story was hazy. There were gaps in her memory, moments that seemed too painful or confusing to explain fully. He stayed nearby, observing quietly. He noticed the way her small hands fidgeted when she was nervous, the way her eyes darted toward the door as if she were expecting danger to appear at any moment. She flinched at sudden movements and seemed startled by loud voices. It was clear that her time alone in the forest had left deep emotional marks. Clara asked gently, "Can you tell us anything about your family? Where you live?" The girl shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. I don't know," she whispered. I don't remember them." He felt a tight knot form in his chest. It was one thing to find her in the forest, to bring her to safety. It was another to realize that her past was a complete mystery. Who had she come from? Who was looking for her? And why had she ended up alone in the woods? The social worker suggested a temporary safe placement, a small foster home where she could recover, eat proper meals, and get rest. He agreed, though he knew the girl would be anxious about leaving his side. She clung to him briefly before being guided gently to a car that would take her to the foster home. As they drove away, he watched from the sidewalk, feeling a mix of relief and unease. She was safe, yes, but her story was far from over. The mystery of who she was and what had happened to her would not disappear simply because she was out of the forest. The next day, he returned to the cabin to gather some of her belongings. He found small items scattered across the floor: an old bracelet, a scrap of paper with a child's handwriting, a worn toy. Each item told a story of her life before the forest, though the details were incomplete. He packed the items carefully, intending to bring them to the social worker so that they could help her piece together her past. Meanwhile, word of the discovery had spread through the town. People were curious, speculating about the girl's story. Some wondered if she had run away from home, others if she had been abandoned or lost. The questions buzzed quietly in the background, but he tried not to let them distract him. The girl's safety and well-being were what mattered most. At the foster home, the girl slowly adjusted to the new environment. The caregivers were patient, offering food, clean clothes, and comfort, but she remained quiet and reserved. She rarely spoke, and when she did, it was in fragments. He visited her whenever he could, sitting quietly beside her, reading stories, and helping her with simple tasks. His presence was a constant reassurance, a reminder that she was not alone and that someone cared deeply for her well-being. One afternoon, as they sat together in the small garden behind the foster home, she finally spoke more clearly. "I remember. A house," she whispered. "Big house, with lots of rooms and people shouting." He nodded gently, encouraging her to continue. "That's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now. You don't have to be afraid. Can you tell me more?" She shook her head slowly, tears brimming in her eyes. "No, I don't want to." He reached out and gently held her hand. "You don't have to," he said. "Whenever you're ready, I'll be here to listen." Days passed and the girl's trust in him grew slowly. She began to eat more regularly, sleep better, and even smile occasionally. Small victories marked each day: a laugh over a shared joke, a careful drawing, a successful attempt at a new activity. These moments reminded him that resilience could emerge even in the most difficult circumstances, and that hope could take root slowly, quietly, and steadily. He also began working with the authorities to try to trace her past. They checked missing persons reports, contacted local hospitals, and looked for any clues that could lead to her family or guardians. Each lead seemed to reach a dead end, leaving the girl's history shrouded in mystery. The uncertainty weighed heavily on him, but he refused to give up. He knew that uncovering her past was crucial to helping her fully heal. During one visit, the girl finally spoke a bit more about her time in the forest. I hid," she said quietly. Because someone hurt me." He listened carefully, his heart heavy with concern. "You're safe now," he reassured her. "No one can hurt you here. You don't have to be afraid." She nodded slowly, though her eyes still held traces of fear. I ran as far as I could," she whispered. "I didn't know where to go, but I kept moving." The determination in her voice, faint as it was, struck him deeply. despite even writhing she had endured, she had survived. She had found a way through fear and isolation, and now she was slowly reclaiming her life. Over the next few weeks, small pieces of her past began to emerge. She remembered fragments of a family, a home, and experiences that seemed distant and dreamlike. She spoke of rooms filled with light, voices of people she once trusted, and moments of both happiness and fear. Each revelation brought both comfort and pain, a reminder of what she had lost and the life she was slowly beginning to rebuild. Through it all, he remained by her side, a steady presence in a world that had once been chaotic and threatening. He helped her navigate the difficult emotions that surfaced, offering reassurance, patience, and support. He encouraged her to draw, write, or talk whenever she felt able, creating a space where her voice could begin to be heard again. One afternoon, she surprised him by pointing to a photograph she had found in the foster home's small collection. That's me," she whispered, her voice trembling. I remember now. That was before everything." He knelt beside her, looking at the photog. The days in the foster home passed quietly, each one bringing small signs of progress. The girl was beginning to smile more often, though it was still tentative, and her laughter, when it came, was like sunlight breaking through clouds. She had started to engage with other children at the home, though always cautiously, and she was learning to trust that the world could be kind again. He visited her every day, making the journey from his home to the foster home without complaint. Each visit he brought small comforts, a favorite snack, a book to read together, or just his quiet presence. They would sit together in the garden or on a bench near the playground, and he would talk softly, letting her guide the conversation. He didn't push her, didn't rush her to speak about things she wasn't ready to confront. He simply reminded her that she was not alone, and that someone believed in her. One morning, the social worker, Clara, arrived with news that had both him and the girl leaning forward in cautious curiosity. "We may have a lead," she said gently, kneeling down to the girl's level. "It's not certain, but there's someone who might know more about you, someone who could help us understand where you came from." The girl's eyes widened, a mixture of fear and hope flickering across her face. "Really?" she whispered. "Someone knows me?" "Yes," Clara replied softly. "We need to be careful, though. We don't know exactly what we'll find, so we'll take it one step at a time." He reached over and gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "I'll be here with you." Over the next few days, the authorities worked carefully to verify the lead. They traced records, cross-referenced missing persons reports, and examined small clues the girl had offered about her life, fragments of memories, a locket she had worn, and a description of her home. Every small detail was considered, each one potentially a key to unlocking the truth. Finally, the call came. The girl's past was not what anyone had expected. She was not simply lost or abandoned. The discovery of who she was sent shockwaves through the foster home, the authorities, and through him personally. She was the granddaughter of a well-known philanthropist, someone whose family had been in the public eye for decades. Her parents had been protective, perhaps too protective, sheltering her from a world they feared might harm her. But a sudden tragedy had fractured that life. A car accident, followed by legal complications and family disputes, had left her in a state of uncertainty, without guardianship and effectively isolated. She had run, confused and afraid, into the forest, seeking safety in solitude, driven by the same survival instincts that had carried her through the difficult days alone. When he shared the revelation with her gently, her reaction was a mix of disbelief, confusion, and relief. I have family," she whispered, her voice trembling. People who were looking for me?" "Yes," he said softly. "People who care about you, who want to help you. You're not alone anymore." She buried her face in her hands for a moment, tears spilling quietly. The reality of her past, the life she had lost, and the uncertainty she had endured crashed over her all at once. It was overwhelming, but beneath the fear was a sense of hope that she could reclaim the life she had been separated from. The authorities arranged a careful meeting with a relative who could verify her identity and provide guidance. He accompanied her, ensuring she felt safe and supported. As they drove, she remained quiet, staring out the window, lost in thought. The forest, the days of fear and uncertainty, and the cabin where she had first found safety all swirled in her mind. She realized just how far she had come, and yet how much remained uncertain. When they arrived at the designated location, the reunion was cautious. A woman, her expression a mixture of concern, relief, and awe, greeted the girl. She knelt down slowly, extending her arms. "I've been looking for you," she said softly. "Are you okay?" The girl hesitated, glancing at him for reassurance. He nodded gently, a silent message that she could take her time. Slowly she stepped forward, allowing herself to be held. The moment was delicate, almost surreal. After so many days of fear and uncertainty, she was finally being embraced by someone connected to her past. Questions followed, about her days in the forest, the people she had met and the struggles she had endured. She spoke cautiously at first, then with more confidence, recounting the small victories, the fear, and the determination that had carried her through. Each word was a thread, weaving together the story of survival, courage, and resilience. He watched quietly, feeling a mixture of relief and awe. She had faced unimaginable challenges and emerged stronger, yet still vulnerable in ways that required patience and understanding. The reunion was emotional, but he knew that the most important part was ensuring she felt safe, supported, and able to navigate the complex emotions that her discovery would inevitably bring. In the following days, arrangements were made for her care and integration back into her family's environment. Legal matters, guardianship, and counseling were all carefully coordinated. He continued to visit, though now with a different purpose, not only to provide support but also to help her adjust to a world she had been cut off from for so long. During one quiet afternoon, he sat with her in the garden at the foster home. She looked at him thoughtfully, her expression serious. "I never thought anyone would care enough to find me," she said softly. "I did," he replied simply, "and I'll keep caring no matter what." She smiled faintly, a small but meaningful gesture. It was a smile born from trust, resilience, and the recognition that someone had stood by her when the world seemed absent of kindness. As they sat together, she began to open up more about her life before the forest, fragments of memories about her family, the house she had lived in, and the life she had briefly known. Each memory was bittersweet, a mixture of happiness and sorrow, but sharing them helped her reclaim a part of herself that had been lost in fear and isolation. Through it all, he listened patiently, offering comfort when needed and quiet encouragement when she hesitated. He realized that sometimes the most important role was simply to be present, to bear witness to someone's story, and to offer unwavering support. The story of her past also revealed unexpected resilience. Despite the fear, isolation, and uncertainty, she had survived. She had endured days alone in the forest, navigating hunger, cold, and the unknown. She had maintained a spark of hope, however faint, and it had guided her to safety. Her courage was quiet but undeniable, a testament to the human spirit's ability to persist in even the harshest. The days following her reunion with her family were filled with a mix of adjustment, discovery, and quiet wonder. She had entered a world that was both familiar and strange. Her family's home was large, filled with the sounds of people and activities she had barely remembered. Yet she recognized fragments, furniture, photographs, and small personal items that connected her to a past she had nearly forgotten. He continued to visit her regularly, ensuring that the transition was gentle and supportive. Each visit was a reminder that while the environment had changed, the foundation of trust and care he had built remained. He watched her slowly become more comfortable with her surroundings, more willing to speak, more willing to engage with those around her. The first week was the hardest. She struggled with the sudden influx of attention and questions. People asked her where she had been, what had happened, and how she was feeling. Sometimes the questions were overwhelming, causing her to retreat into silence. He recognized the signs, the small fidgeting of her hands, the way her eyes darted to the floor, the slight tremor in her voice. When it became too much, he would quietly suggest a walk, a small activity to help her reset and regain her composure. One afternoon, they sat together in a quiet courtyard, shaded by tall trees. The air was warm, carrying the faint scent of flowers from the garden. She was holding a small notebook, sketching images of the forest, the cabin, and her time with him. "You draw really well," he said gently. "Do you like capturing things on paper?" She nodded slowly. "It helps me remember," she said softly. "And sometimes, it helps me feel safe. That's good, he replied. Drawing can help us understand our feelings, especially when words are hard. She looked up at him, her eyes thoughtful. I remember more now, she whispered. Not everything, but some things. The forest. The cabin. You, he smiled gently. I'm glad. You survived all of that and now you're here. You're safe and that's what matters. She paused, then asked quietly, Do you think I can ever be normal again? He took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. Normal isn't always the right word, but you can have a life that's happy, full, and safe. You can feel strong again, even after everything you've been through. And you'll always have people who care about you, including me. Her small smile was a mixture of relief and hope. It was not a perfect smile. It carried the weight of her experiences. But it was real, a sign of growth and healing. Over the next few weeks, the girl began attending a small local school. The first days were filled with nerves and uncertainty, but she found comfort in routine, in the quiet support of teachers who understood her situation, and in the gradual acceptance of her peers. He accompanied her to the school a few times, offering reassurance and encouragement until she felt confident enough to navigate the day on her own. At home, her family worked to create a nurturing environment that balanced care with independence. They encouraged her to share memories, express feelings, and engage in activities she enjoyed. They also sought professional support to help her process the trauma she had endured, ensuring that she received guidance and counseling tailored to her needs. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, she and he sat together on a small balcony overlooking the garden. The quiet was comforting, a contrast to the chaos and fear she had known. I'm glad you found me, she said softly, her voice carrying both gratitude and wonder. He shook his head gently. I didn't find you by luck, he replied. You were brave enough to survive. You kept going when it was hard. I just happened to be there to help. She looked at him thoughtfully. But you gave me hope. When I didn't have any, I'm glad I could, he said quietly. Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you, to remind you that you're not alone. That person can make a difference. Her eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of relief and recognition rather than fear. She had endured fear, loneliness, and uncertainty, and now she could begin to fully embrace safety, care, and the possibility of happiness. As weeks turned into months, she continued to thrive. Her confidence grew, her voice became stronger, and her smile became more frequent. She discovered new hobbies, made friends, and reconnected with the fragments of her past that she remembered. The memories of the forest, the cabin, and the fear she had felt remained, but they became part of a larger story, one of resilience, courage, and survival. He remained a constant presence in her life, a reminder that trust, patience, and consistent care could help someone heal from trauma. He attended school events, celebrated small victories, and continued to offer guidance and reassurance. The bond they had formed in the forest had become a foundation for recovery, a source of strength and stability. One day, while they were walking through a park near her home, she stopped and looked up at him. Do you think one day I'll be able to help someone else? She asked quietly. He smiled, touched by the question. I think you already will, he said. You've been through something very hard, and that experience can make you strong, compassionate, and understanding. You'll find ways to help others, even in small ways, just by being yourself. She nodded slowly, a sense of purpose shining in her eyes. I want to, she said softly. I want to help like you helped me. You will, he said confidently. And I'll be here to support you as you grow and discover how to make a difference. The community also began to recognize her resilience. Her story, once one of fear and isolation, became an example of courage and recovery. Local newspapers covered the discovery, highlighting the bravery of the girl and the compassion of those who helped her, particularly the man who had found her in the forest. People were moved by the narrative, inspired by the quiet strength it revealed. Despite the attention, she remained grounded. She focused on her studies, her hobbies, and the relationships she was rebuilding. She continued to draw, capturing moments from her past and present, using art as a way to process her emotions and express herself. Each sketch told a story, a memory, a hope, a fear overcome. He watched her growth with quiet pride. She was no longer the frightened girl in the forest. She had become a young person capable of resilience, empathy, and hope. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had also revealed the strength of the human spirit and the power of compassion and care. One afternoon, as they sat together in the garden, she looked up at him with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think, if I had stayed alone, I could have survived?" she asked. He shook his head gently. "I think you would have survived in some way," he said. "You were brave enough to keep going, to find safety, but it would have been much harder without help. That's why compassion and support matter. They make survival and recovery possible." She nodded, absorbing the words. "I understand," she said softly. "And I understand now why I needed to trust you, even though it was scary." "That's right," he said. "Trust takes time, but it can change everything." As the sun set behind the trees, casting long shadows across the garden, a sense of peace settled over them. The forest where she had been lost, the cabin where she had first found safety, and the uncertainty that had filled her days were now part of a story that had led her to healing and hope. Her future was no longer defined by fear or isolation. She had survived, learned to trust, and discovered the strength within herself to face new challenges. With the guidance of her family, the support of professionals, and the ongoing presence of someone who believed in her, she was ready to embrace life fully, and he, who had been there in the forest when she was most vulnerable, continued to stand by her, a steady presence in a world that had once seemed uncertain. Together they had faced fear, uncertainty, and the unknown, and together they had found hope, safety, and the possibility of a brighter future. In the end, the girl's fate was no longer a story of fear or loss. It had transformed into a story of courage, resilience, and the power of human connection. She had been found in the forest, alone and afraid. But she emerged not just surviving, but thriving, ready to embrace a life filled with trust, care, and the knowledge that she was never truly alone. And as they walked side by side through the garden, she knew that whatever the future held, she could face it, stronger, braver, and supported by those who had shown her that even in the darkest moments, hope and compassion could light the way. Circumstances. As the pieces of her past came together, he felt a growing sense of pride, not in himself but in her. She had faced adversity with strength, had learned to trust cautiously, and had begun to reclaim her life on her own terms. He realized that while he had helped her find safety, the true heroism was hers, the bravery, resilience, and quiet determination that had carried her through fear and uncertainty. Even as her family welcomed her back and arrangements were made for her future, he remained a constant presence, a reminder that stability, trust, and patience were essential in helping someone heal. His visits became a bridge between her past and her emerging future, offering continuity and reassurance in a world that had once seemed unpredictable and threatening. The community, too, learned of her story. They were surprised, awed, and moved by the resilience of a child who had faced such uncertainty and fear. Her story became a quiet inspiration, a reminder that courage and survival often manifest in small, quiet ways. The girl had endured, grown stronger, and now faced a future filled with possibility rather than fear. One evening, as they sat quietly on a bench watching the sunset, she turned to him with a seriousness that caught his attention. I don't think I would have made it without you," she said softly. He shook his head gently. "You would have," he said. "You were brave enough to survive, and you've grown stronger every day. I just helped you along the way." She smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and understanding. "But it was more than that," she whispered. "You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." He felt a lump in his throat. Words seemed inadequate, but he nodded, acknowledging the truth of her statement. He had seen her strength, and he had also witnessed the fragility that made her courage all the more remarkable. As night fell, they remained on the bench, the sky painted with streaks of orange and pink. The world outside the foster home was still, calm, and full of possibility. She had survived fear, isolation, and uncertainty, and now she could begin to embrace the life that awaited her, guided by support, trust, and the understanding that she was not alone. Though her story had taken an unexpected turn, it also revealed the profound resilience of the human spirit. She had been lost in the forest, but she had been found, not only by him but by the promise of safety, care, and hope. And in that promise, she discovered something even more valuable, the ability to face the future with courage and the knowledge that she could survive whatever challenges lay ahead. Raf. It showed a younger version of her, smiling in a sunlit garden. The image was a stark contrast to the frightened, vulnerable girl she had been when he first found her. "Yes," he said softly. "That's you. You're still you, and you've survived everything. That's what matters."